So Dan, great to have you here today from DBT Labs, and you have been great partners with Tech Mahindra. I know you're doing amazing work in the field of data analytics. So, but before we get into our discussion, which is enabling strategy or data strategy for the world of AI, why don't you maybe quickly introduce yourself, and then we'll take it from there.
Sure, and thank you for having us today. Really appreciate it. It's been a great day. I head ecosystems for DBT Labs, and before that, I worked for a company called Solonis, and that was all around building out the ecosystem to bring value to customers a lot quicker. And before that, I worked in Accenture, working out where we should make minority stake investments into and how we build a practice, but all anchored around how do we get customer value faster.
Yes. Great. And just to introduce myself, I'm Saurabh Jha. I'm a Senior Vice President and Head of Data and Analytics Practice globally for Tech Mahindra. So here we are in conversation with DBT Labs, Dan from DBT Labs. And Dan, so let's start with the overview of the market, the way you see it. What are you hearing from your customers? What are they looking for? Last 2 years have been historical, in terms of how AI has suddenly become the center of conversation in boardrooms and every single conversation. But the one peculiarity that we have observed is that all conversations that begin with AI end with data.
Yeah.
So what are your views and what are your observations?
Well, I think if we take it at its highest level, a kind of macro level, we've got a lot of things happening on the supply side. We've got a lot of things happening on the demand side. Look at the demand side to start with. Only, I think 7% of use cases for AI currently make it into production. So there's a lot of resources being used that aren't going to deliver business value, a lot of exploring around that. On the supply side, we've had $96 billion spent by VC companies on tech startups around the AI space. And we've got OpenAI looking for 150 million valuation, right? And as the NASDAQ creeps back up and interest rates start to come down, that flow of capital will continue to go into the AI space. But the big question mark for the companies we speak to is how can we get value faster from AI, but get value in a governed way?
Since you were talking numbers, I don't know where, I think I heard it in one of the podcasts that almost $1 trillion have been spent in compute for AI already, right? And I don't see any signs of slowing, at least at this point in time. And you're right, we don't know how much value has actually been derived out of it. And I can understand the confusion of organizations. See, from my point of view, of the hundreds of companies that we engage with currently, plus many more hundreds that we actually talk to regularly, what I'm seeing is there are two different approaches. On one hand, there are a few which have opened the field for their entire labor force, so to say. But okay, go ahead and start experimenting and see where it can add value to you. AI, ML, Gen AI, everything, right? On the other hand, we see organizations which are way more guarded and controlled in their approach, where they are like, okay, let us first see if this thing is safe, this thing is not going to harm us, if data will not leak, and so on and so forth. And then they are slowly opening up the gates, to maybe select teams and so on. Now, with a few of our customers, one approach that we have seen is it starts with and this is about 6 to 8 months after the whole GPT 3.5 revolution, if we may call it, is they coming up with a list of hundreds of use cases across different departments and different different business processes and so on, and then shortening the list to X number that they really want to take into production because they've done some evaluation of, okay, this makes sense for us and makes sense to spend money. Whereas the others are still, at an experimental stage, and you said 6 to 7% make it to production. And yeah, that's right. That's about the right number. So similar observations on our side as well. But yeah, these two distinct approaches where one, they're opening it up and saying, okay, go play with it and let's see where we land. Other, where they're very controlled that we will first figure out if everything is safe and then we'll take it. So that's from our side. So from a DBT Labs perspective, how are you tackling this situation?
Well, when you describe, and we love a binary measure, right? When you describe those two scenarios, do you know what I think? Do you know what I see in my mind? I see a terrified CFO.
Right.
I see a terrified CFO because, if you're going to feed an AI model with any of those use cases and you're going to put data into the model, yes, you could have hallucinations, but on the other end of the spectrum, you could be putting in information that's high risk. It could
Yes.
put your organization at risk. So, you know, talking about a customer perspective and the feedback we get, there's two areas. First of all, they want to find the right use cases that are going to deliver value quickly, but also they want to do it in a governed way. So, for example, if you take what we do at DBT Labs, that's about shipping trusted data products faster.
Mm.
It's all about transforming your data in a highly governed way, but also increasing the speed as well. So hitting those two areas of higher productivity from any work you're doing around data transformation, but being able to do it in a secure and governed way. And those are two themes that we're finding resonate almost regardless of the AI use case. And that's why for a CFO, and when you take those two scenarios, I think of the scared CFO. I think that's why a solution like DBT actually resonates with that group of people as well as CDO more naturally.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to extend this conversation a bit. Now, when we talk about AI, Gen AI, I think all of us know, everybody recognizes that at the back of it is a really strong data ecosystem to actually enable it. Whatever the use case be, it could be your traditional AI, machine learning, predictive, prescriptive, or it could be Gen AI, where even more data is required, right? And if I look at the kind of engagements that Techem is currently engaged in, we have engagements where yes, we are using either proprietary or open source large language models to develop, business and use cases, or there are situations where we are actually developing foundational models for our customers. So there are at least 15 plus customers where we have developed foundational models from scratch for them using their own data, right? So there we are completely de-risking using an external model, for example, where there could be any situation of a data leak. So all that LLM itself has been created based on their data, right? So that is the extremity at which we are working. However, the foundation still in both the cases is data, a well-governed data, because it's not just about good quality data. You have the whole thing around bias, fairness, responsibility, explainability, and so on and so forth. And that I think is critical. And you just mentioned that you provide the ability for enterprises to create governed data products where you can observe the entire lineage of the data, how it is moving, what it is moving. But to what extent do you go? For example, will a regulatory AI compliance sit within this layer, or will it be an external intervention into this entire process of data product creation?
Well, that's when you start talking about AI agents and how they could operate, having subsets of specialized AIs underneath it. I don't think there's any limit to the level of integration between something like that data governance. I don't think we're there today. I mean, this came up this morning in terms of who is responsible.
Yeah, for responsible AI.
Who's responsible for responsible? We all benefit from data quality. We all want trusted data. But the reality is there is no single person or department. And actually, one of the challenges that we find in organizations is that already we're siloed between the people who are working on AI and the traditional data engineers. And what we found is
which has to close.
Yeah, it has to close. There has to be a common way of operating. Tristan, our founder, actually released an article, a white paper called the Analytic Development Life Cycle. And this picks up this concept that we've started in data transformation, but because we're so fixated on business outcomes, we've realized we need to look at each one of the stages in delivering value. So that might start with planning, building, testing, deploying, operate, observing, through to analyzing and then going through the loop again. That kind of approach means we need people who can wear the different hats of each of those stages and not be stuck in one silo.
Yes.
So if we want to unlock the true value of AI, then we need to have this kind of multi-hat approach.
That's actually a great point of view.
Yeah, exactly.
That while the people can be skilled in maybe multiple things, but the point of view or the observing point of view has to keep on changing throughout the life cycle. That one is when they are wearing, from a data quality perspective, that I have the right data, I'm creating the right product, for a right use case. Now I also have to check that this data is bias free, for example. If it is for a Gen AI kind of a scenario or for AI, if it's reporting, then the data quality has to be great. So all of that, different hats of, maker checker kind of a thing, right? It has to be worn by the same person instead of it passing, hand to hand. Otherwise, how many teams are you going to set up just for one single life cycle? It doesn't make sense.
Exactly, and then you can't have the agility that you need to refine it. When we come back to that fail fast, 6 or 7% going through each production, organisations have got to get better at that. Right, you can't afford to have that level of burn rate around innovation. So yeah, it's a fascinating area, and certainly as we see. I mean, you can get to a geopolitical level in terms of who's producing chips, but as we move down to more specialized chip manufacturing for specialized AIs that are running under an AI agent, I think that's also going to change the dynamics of the market and how much companies can do themselves versus going externally. You talked about the triage earlier. If you've got a use case, does it need a Gen AI, does it need LLM, SLM, does it need something proprietary by the company?
Right.
I think that the ecosystem there is going to radically change to open up new opportunities for companies as we get this evolution in specialized chips underpinning the development.
That's an interesting perspective. But that still will, okay, got it. But that is going to solve the problem of cost control in a way, right? That you don't use heavy duty chips for running small SLMs at edge, for example. I completely understand that. Okay, so just moving into the future, where I think both of us agree that data and AI, first of all, cannot be two different fields. They're the same. Call it analytics, call it by a new name. We don't care, but it's one single seamless flow. Now, having said that, we know that in most organizations that's not the case, right? So if you had to advise some of these organizations, the CIOs or CEOs for that matter, because maybe it needs to be driven from the top, what are the few steps that they need to take to get there, to actually start deriving a whole lot of value from data and technologies, or technologies like AI, ML, and Gen AI? How should they go about it? Any views on that?
Well, I think it needs to be people-centric to start with. One of the issues with what's developed is if people don't use it and don't engage with it, then it's pretty pointless. So
Yes.
we're trying to develop technologies that can be utilized more broadly with more broader personas. And this isn't just DBT, we're doing that, but lots of companies doing that. If you don't have the data literacy within the organization to pick those things up, then it's a problem. So if you're prioritizing business cases, first of all, you've got to see a really clear short-term economic return on it. And secondly, you should really be qualifying whether it's going to be utilized, right? Whether the people are actually going to engage with that. Other than that, I'd probably break into two areas. First of all, kind of what will become quite commoditized back office improvements, which is something which aren't really core competencies shouldn't be a core competency for a large organization. Those things will probably get dealt with by the market quite quickly. And then looking at AI specifically around revenue generation, that on things that are unique to that particular customer should probably be a priority area of innovation. But importantly, regardless of how you're looking at the business cases, you've got to start from the fundamentals, which is how are you transforming your data? Have you got the basics in place to make sure you're not wasting resources on any of those use cases? And that comes down to have you got the right transformation in place, got the right governance?
I think that's a very good point of view because, like you said, back office processes, somebody out there will do the work and kind of solve that problem. And we should not spend too much time and energy on that. Whereas when it comes to increasing the competitive edge of the organization, see, one is revenue, cost, I understand those are the basics, but there are certain capabilities that can be built which are proprietary that actually give the organization a competitive edge. Whether you talk about, I don't know, the recommendation engine of Netflix, for example, or some of the e-commerce marketplaces, for example, they are a competitive edge for those companies, right? And we also heard Booking.com today, the way they are using it, and they are one of the best booking sites right out there. So that I think is where investment will be justified. That okay, this if we use AI in this way, or if we develop this kind of a algorithm or an ecosystem, even though costly, even though we will have to pay heavily for its compute, it's still worthwhile because it gives us that competitive edge in the market. Whereas, for example, simple things like document search, enterprise search, yeah, I don't, those are solved problems. And given how good the open source LLMs are getting, I think that itself will be able to take care of the, these aspects. So,
Yeah.
so
There's a wonderful parallel here at a geopolitical country level to an organization. Because the things we're talking about in that example are how do you foster an environment of innovation in your organization that's going to deliver the next thing that's going to drive the profitability and the growth of your company, right? What's the thing you think of? Let's assume for now that AI can't do it on its own. let's stay with the people. Well, that's almost the same with what's happening at a kind of country level. You can't limit innovation by country. You can't like stem the movement of raw materials that's going to stop another country from developing chips, right? The thing you can try and foster is an environment where the latest innovation of chips, for example, in this example, is going to happen in your country rather than another country. And that's something that's happening right now. That's a very clear parallel to what we're talking about in an organization, which is using AI in the front office, or wherever it might be, that's going to give you that latest cutting edge solution that's going to allow you to outcompete.
Yeah,
I think that's absolutely, and that is getting quite specialist as well. I would say if you're looking at pharma or something like that, it's really getting into some kind of specialist areas. So yeah, it's still down to the people.
absolutely. I think it will always come down to the people because technology will keep changing, how to use it effectively, and more importantly, like we started off, that everything has to be towards a use case. You cannot create a solution in search of a problem. It has to be solving a use case, and you should know what it is going to solve even before you start investing into it. And the other thing which we spoke about, where the entire chain from data to analytics to AI to Gen AI, it has to be one single analytical life cycle. It cannot be four different areas of specialization. So these two, I think, from my end, and of course, the governance layer, that's fine, that will go through its paces and there will be a structure that will be set up. But I think, yeah, so people culture, again, I think we come down to the basics all the time.
Well, we actually do. I do have a question for you, actually.
Yeah.
If there's one thing that you'd want AI to do,
I don't know, answer my emails, I guess.
well, I had this conversation, a long debate about this with some friends the other day, and I think if AI had the ability to help people understand themselves better and therefore understand others, it would be an incredible step forward.
Kind of a psychotherapist.
Yeah, exactly. That would be a tremendous step forward for AI.
Some days I don't think I want to understand my thoughts. Anyway, great conversation. Thank you so much, Dan.
Great catching up.
Yeah.